phase of the Allies meeting where we have our SBA friends and our FEMA friends here with us to talk about some disaster relief. As you all know, this summer floods caused Michigan some huge damage. A lot of our family and friends and coworkers were affected by the rain that came through. And so they have come here to talk about some disaster relief efforts that they are undertaking in the city and how we can receive access to them for our restoration of homes and businesses. So I think we're going to have our SBA friends first, or we're going to let them decide the best way that they want to come up and present. And then when you're ready for the PowerPoint, just let me know.
Good morning. My name is David Bass. I'm a spokesperson for the Federal Emergency Management Agency. On behalf of our federal coordinating officer, the head of FEMA's operations here in Michigan, Dolph Demont, and the state coordinating officer, Captain Chris Kolensky, thank you very much for having us here. I mentioned the state coordinating officer because FEMA works in partnership. We are not the only part of the operation in a recovery after a disaster. We are just one member of a team. We partner with the state, we partner with local governments, we partner with other federal agencies like the SBA, the Army Corps of Engineers. We don't do this alone. We are just part of the team. We are often the face of a recovery effort, but we always like to stress that we are working with the state, with the local communities, and with our other partners in the federal government to deliver assistance to the survivors of a disaster. We have two primary programs that we offer to a state after a disaster. One is rather badly named, called public assistance. In fact, it should be called infrastructure assistance. It's the program which helps communities and state government recover from a disaster. FEMA pays 75% of the cost of eligible repairs to damaged public infrastructure. We pay 75% of the cost of responding to a disaster. That program has a fairly large footprint on the ground right now. They are out working with towns, with the state on developing the parameters of the response and the reimbursement efforts that will go forward on that front. The other part of the piece of the puzzle is individual assistance, which is the assistance we provide to individuals and households that have been affected by a disaster event. Since we've been on the ground roughly a week and a half now, we've registered nearly 70,000 individuals and households for assistance. We've approved approximately $61.6 million worth of assistance to individuals and households. And I'm going to turn it over to Colleen Finkel, who is the Individual Assistance Deputy Branch Director for this event, and she can explain the programs and the sequence of delivery for this assistance in much more detail. So, Colleen.
Thank you so much. I'm ready for
We're ready?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for inviting us to speak to you today regarding our disaster recovery efforts here in Michigan. As you know, 3 counties were declared by the president for both individual assistance and public assistance: Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne. So all individuals and households in those 3 counties who were impacted by the August storms are welcomed and encouraged to call and apply for assistance. And I'll briefly walk you through the sequence of delivery so you have a better understanding of how our program works, especially when it comes to working in coordination with our other federal agency partners, our voluntary and faith-based partners, insurance, and all of the steps that you need to be aware of in order to not only help yourselves if you were impacted, but spread the word to your friends, your colleagues, so that everybody knows to give us a call or go online and register, and let our inspectors be the experts and let people know if they're eligible for FEMA individual assistance. So this is a very difficult to read slide. In the federal government, we like to use small fonts and put a lot of words on slides, but I will be walking through each one of these. So if you have any questions, we can take those at the end. The critical thing to remember is at the very beginning and at the very end of the sequence of delivery are people like you, our voluntary and faith-based partners, our community leaders who are there as soon as the incident happens and will be there taking care of people long after the federal government's program is over and we're gone. And I'm thrilled to see the United Way here. 211 has been such a huge provider of assistance during this event, and 211 continues to be a huge provider of assistance. So thank you so much for everything that you do. So our voluntary agencies will help with emergency needs such as food, shelter, clothing, medical needs, and in this case, a critical partner in helping residents clean and sanitize their basements, as most of the damage that we saw was to basements and the first floor living areas. The next slide, insurance. The federal government cannot duplicate benefits, so if you have insurance, you're required to file a claim with your insurance agent and then let us know what your settlement is. Now, in this case, we have two different types of insurance that could be at play. One is national flood insurance policies, which is for overland flooding, and also sewer backup riders, which is a rider on your homeowner's insurance. And just because you have insurance doesn't mean that you will or won't be eligible for FEMA assistance. It depends on the type of damage, the cause of damage, what your level of coverage is, what that coverage is for, and very importantly, what that coverage isn't for. Our partners with the Small Business Administration, and they'll go into much greater detail about their program, provides low-interest loans not only to businesses, but also to homeowners and individuals and renters. We have our Other Needs Assistance Program, which helps folks with certain personal property items. So for Small Business Administration, we have part of our program, which is our Other Needs Assistance, which is dependent on not being accepted into the Small Business Administration loan program. So if an individual doesn't qualify for a Small Business Administration loan, they'll be referred back to the Federal Emergency Management Agency to potentially receive a grant in our Other Needs Assistance category. And again, that's things like personal property and other things that are not SBA dependent would be funeral expenses, medical expenses, dental expenses, and other things that the state, our critical partner in this, has elected to put as an additional assistance item. And those are usually things like smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, and things that help make homes safe and functioning after a disaster. How to register is always a question that comes up. And during the couple of weeks after the event, I'm sure a lot of people had local emergency management agencies or local volunteer agencies visit them. They may have gotten phone calls inquiring about what sort of damage, if any, they had. During our preliminary damage assessment, where FEMA came out in conjunction with the state and local representatives, FEMA may have even come to your home or somebody else in your neighborhood looking at the damages. And I was lucky enough to be here for the preliminary damage assessment about 6 weeks ago. And that's another reason why being here today is so rewarding, where we can see during the preliminary damage assessment the widespread level of damages and how the storm impacted folks in these three counties. And to be able to then be here for a presidential declaration is really rewarding, because we were able to see with our own eyes that this event was very widespread and caused significant impacts to people, even though it wasn't all over the news as much as some other events are all over the country. And that's why, again, our voluntary agencies and our faith-based partners are so critical in keeping the momentum of recovery moving forward. David mentioned some of our highlights for where we are in registrations and providing assistance to folks impacted in those three counties. Again, we're at over $45 million in assistance out in the field, and we're right about the 70,000 mark for our registrations. We also have done over 53,000 housing inspections. So when you call or register online, an inspector with the Federal Emergency Management Agency will contact you and schedule an appointment. It's very important to note that our FEMA inspectors do not wear FEMA shirts, but they will have FEMA badges. And at any point in time, if you have a question about who's at your door, again, the inspector should have called you and set up an appointment. The inspector will have a palm pad or a computer in which he or she takes the information that he sees about the damages. And at no time would a FEMA inspector ever ask for money. We don't charge for our inspectors to come out. It's a free service that is provided as part of our recovery. And if you ever have any questions about who it is that's coming to your home, you can always call the 800 number and confirm with one of our helpline staff that an inspector is coming to your home and the date and those sorts of things. The last thing we want to do is to have anybody think that they are allowing somebody from the Federal Emergency Management Agency into their home and have it not be somebody who's legitimate. And it's terribly unfortunate, but it happens every disaster. So it's something to be mindful about. Something else that's also very important to be mindful about is who you have repair or replace things, especially like your furnace, your water heater, or your electrical system. There's always reputable contractors out there who are very willing to come and help. Unfortunately, there's also folks who are not as reputable. So really, it's critically important to the extent possible to use licensed bonded contractors for these things. The last thing we would want to see is an electrical problem down the road because the contractor wasn't reputable. So that's another thing to keep in mind for yourselves and for when you talk to your friends. Our voluntary agencies, like I had mentioned before, have also been working tirelessly during this event. We have seen over 33,000 hours of volunteer labor. A lot of that was to help people clean out their impacted basements and impacted homes. We still have approximately 2,000 people on the waiting list for assistance in cleaning and gutting out their basements. And a lot of those folks are elders within your communities and people with access and functional needs. And in partnership with the state, in order to help bridge that gap between what voluntary agencies can do and what that great need is, especially considering we're going into winter and it's imperative to get these areas cleaned and up and functional. The state of Michigan and the Federal Emergency Management Agency have paired up to invite in 30 AmeriCorps disaster recovery team members for direct services in helping our most needed community members with cleaning and repairing their impacted basements and living areas. And again, United Way, our 211 partner, has been critical. So what can you guys do to help those of us who are trying to assist people in their recovery? First and foremost, spreading the word that folks need to register. Again, it can be confusing with how many people have contacted residents regarding their damages. Unless somebody has registered with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, either gone online or called our 800 number, and you've received a FEMA registration ID number, you're not registered. So we've had a lot of folks who have called the mayor's office or called their county emergency manager or called 211 who think that they are registered with FEMA. And it's always best if you have any question about whether you're registered or not, call the 800 number and ask one of our helpline staff. Again, encouraging people to use reputable contractors, and then also looking for volunteer opportunities. Again, we have almost 2,000 people within the impacted counties who still really need help with the start of their recovery. And that's cleaning out their basements, sanitizing, and getting their mechanicals functioning. FEMA grants can help assist with that, but we have our AmeriCorps partners and our voluntary agency partners to also lend a hand in that arena.